Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Interviewing and Salary Research and Negotiation Workshop for the College of Education. Just a quick reminder before we get started, this workshop is being recorded. A copy of the slides, any of the shared material that you see today will be provided in a follow-up email. If for some reason you don't get this email, please email me, and I'll make sure you get a copy along with any resources. For any folks tuning in live today, just make sure we stay muted, but if you'd like to participate at any time throughout the presentation, feel free to use the raise hand feature or drop your questions in the chat, just so we can have a clean recording for the folks who might be watching the replay. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. If this is your first time interacting with Career Services, welcome. My name is Logan Todd. I am your Career and Alumni Services Specialist here at United States University. My job is really to help you with anything you see on the screen, and then some. So if you have career-related questions, please come see me. My services are actually free to you while you're a student, but also after you graduate. So if you need support a couple years down the road, don't be afraid to come back and get some support because it is offered free. You can email me anytime. My email is listed right here. And then you can also schedule a one-on-one individualized appointment if you would like further feedback and really dedicate that time just solely for each of us. Today, we're going to be talking about interviewing for educators. We're going to talk about before the interview, during the interview, after the interview. I'm going to go through some different tools. We're going to talk about salary research, how to negotiate as an educator, and then I'll wrap us up with some final tips for success. And then if we have any questions at the end. So jumping right into interviewing. As I said, interviewing is really broken up into some different stages. So we're going to focus now on before the interview. Before, we get that email that says, hey, we'd like to invite you to an interview, this should be your next steps. The first thing we want to do is conduct research. So especially for my folks who are in education, especially teaching, we want to do as much research as possible on the district. We want to know what's going on, what events they have, what initiatives, what values, so that we can be well informed for our conversation. Then we're going to practice. We are going to practice interviewing. We're not going to go in winging it because they will know. I promise you, they will know. We're going to show up early to this interview, and we're going to make sure that we're on time, we are ready to go, and that we also have copies of our materials. So that includes a resume, CV, it includes our teacher portfolio if we have one. If it is something that is a digital copy, we can always have a QR code or have a link ready to send if we need to. The night before, we're going to get a really good night's sleep. And then the day of, we're going to eat a very good, well-balanced breakfast or a meal, if it's after lunchtime as an example, so that we feel our best. We're going to try to pick out our outfit beforehand. I always say do this a week before, just so that you have something ready to go. And if you don't feel comfortable in this outfit anymore, if it doesn't fit properly, we have time to go out and get something new. Now, there's a bunch of different types of interviews that you might encounter. And so one-way interviews are a newer type of interview that you might see. And what one-way interviews are exactly as it says, it's a one-way, meaning it's just you in this interview and you're typically recording yourself answering a question, or you're completing some type of competency or assessment test. Really, these are just used to determine if you're going to move forward in the next round of interviews. And they're also gauging your ability to use these technologies and these different tools. And so just be aware that if you see something like that, that is called a one-way interview. Now, phone screenings are pretty popular. That's just a quick phone call with the recruiter, the hiring manager, the human resources manager, just for some quick questions. Make sure you are qualified, your teaching license and certification is up to standards, those types of things, so that they can move you forward in the process. Now then, hopefully we get to an in-person interview or a virtual interview. Virtual interviews are very convenient, right? Everybody can meet online. And in-person interviews, a little less convenient, but these could both be multiple rounds. You could be, one after the other interview. They could be with different people in the organization. They could be with different educators in the district. Maybe you meet with a principal, maybe you meet with a superintendent as an example. So just be aware. And then a group or panel interview is pretty popular. That's when you have multiple people interviewing you, or you could also be in an interview with multiple other candidates. So just be aware. And the last one is very common in education, and that is a work sample or presentation interview. That is where they want you to do some type of presentation. They'll typically give you a prompt or a question to answer, and they'll ask you to put together a presentation or a lesson plan to do so. So just know that there are many types of interviews out there. These are the most common ones that you might see. Does have a virtual interview. I do want to emphasize some different tips and resources to help you do better in these, because it is new territory. It is a little uncomfortable if you've never done a virtual interview before. And so those digital interviews are typically where, like I said, you're on your computer. It could be one way, could be you're doing a virtual interview with another person, but there's a lot of things to know that are happening in the background. And so a couple of these are what the software is actually doing. And so if they're not using Zoom, they're using some type of other software. What it's doing is actually scanning your facial features. It's looking at your eye contact, the background, right? Do you have any distractions in the space around your face? It's also analyzing your speech, your tone, your clarity, the content, right? Your filler words, the different styles and tones that you're using. So just be aware that those things are happening in the background, whether you know it or not. Now, if you're asked to be completing a virtual assessment, so many things. There's so many different options here. They could be personality tests, they could be emotional intelligence or EQ assessments. They could be asking for skill or competency-based assessment tools. So just know if you ever see anything like HireVue, HackerRank, Test Gorilla, Test Dome, those are typically virtual interview platforms that are doing some type of assessment or having you complete some type of task. So some tips on how you can get through those virtual interviews are try to beat the system. Try to know what types of questions they're going to ask you ahead of time so that you can practice and be prepared. You can have a cheat sheet of notes, or you can have something, your resume, your portfolio there next to you, because really they only see this little square, right? They don't see what's in front of you. They don't see what's behind your computer. They don't really know where you are. So it's okay to have little notes or sticky notes around you as reminders. And sticky notes, I always recommend putting some type of sticker or something next to your camera on your laptop so that it reminds you to look up. Because if we're just sitting there looking at our keyboard, right, we're not really engaged, we're not looking, we're not paying attention. But if we're changing our attention and focusing on the camera of our laptop, it does show that we're actually trying to make eye contact, and it does make a big difference. So just be aware, those small different things, those small changes, it really does make an impact. If you want to practice, if you want to get more familiar with mock interviews, please come see me. I'm more than happy to create a mock interview plan for you. We can pull some questions and really tailor this to meet your needs. Udly is another platform you can practice. I believe they allow you to record 5 practice interview sessions for free. So you can check that out by clicking this button once you get the slides. Another fantastic resource for interviewing preparation, because you can ask it to pull a list for you. So you can see here, I've asked ChatGPT to pull a list of interview questions for a teacher job interview. Now you can be more specific. Let's say you're going into social sciences and you're going to be a social sciences teacher. You can say, provide a list of interview questions for a social sciences teacher job position or interview at XYZ district. Then it'll pull that information from the website. It'll be much more specific, and it will give you very in-depth questions to ask or to practice for your interviews. If you need help formulating responses for those interview questions, do that too. So you can ask, write me a response to the interview question, quote, XYZ, based on the following resume, paste your resume, paste your portfolio, whatever it is. ChatGPT will help you actually formulate a response. Very powerful tool if you know how to use it. So definitely get in there and play around with it, because I think it's a fantastic resource, especially for interviewing. Particular type of interview question that you should be aware of are behavioral-based interview questions. So these, if you're ever in an interview and you hear things like, tell me about yourself, or tell me about a time when, or tell me about an experience, or share an example of, those should immediately be behavioral questions to you. So there's a very easy way to answer behavioral interview questions using the STAR method. So STAR stands for situation, task, action steps, and results. You can answer any behavioral question using any example using the STAR method. And so here's an example of how we can do that. So the sample question that we'll use here is, tell me about a time you had to complete a task within a tight deadline. Describe the situation and explain how you handled it. So I can break down the STAR method using an example. So the example that I chose for this one was at a former employer. We had lost a coworker or a teammate. And so the tasks that I did were that I took responsibility for that lost teammate's project and that short deadline. Some different action steps that I chose, or the different things that I decided to do, were that I tried to ask for help by creating a team from my coworkers. And then based on each of our strengths, we could delegate the work. The result was that we completed the project one day prior, and we were able to present it to the executives, or in this case, we could say the district, right? Or at a conference. So once you have broken it down, then you can really transition it into a professional answer. So I'm not going to read this out loud. You could take some time to review this once you get the slides, but you can see how you can use the STAR method to really break down any question and give a really solid answer that's really results driven as well. And so that's what they're looking for. They want to know that you can maneuver the situation. What was the result? What was the outcome? For those sample lesson plans or presentation type of interviews, I have some tips for you. Number one is, if this is especially in person, but even if you're virtual, it still applies. We want to dress for success, but we also want to make sure that we feel comfortable. So choosing clothes that we feel good in makes us more confident, and we're going to do much better in this process. We're going to try to prepare that presentation as much as possible. I don't want you waiting to the last minute and scrambling to the 11th hour to put this presentation together. We're going to plan ahead. As soon as we get the assignment, we're going to start working on it. And then make sure that when you do finish it, you review it, and also review the prompt that you were given, if you were given one in this case. Read all the directions, all the instructions carefully. Make sure you're covering all those prompts, all those bullet points, all the things that they're asking of you. Then we're going to practice, right? We're going to practice this presentation a couple times. Maybe we're going to reach out to some friends or some family members or colleagues or other fellow students in the program. And we're going to say, hey, can I practice my presentation with you? And so the more you know that material, the better you're going to be. I always like to say practice will never make perfect, but practice does make progress. So the more that we get familiar with this process and practicing presentations and public speaking, the better we're going to get at it. Now, another thing is making sure our presentation is actually accessible, because it's one thing to create this presentation, but if it's not accessible to all, we're not doing a great job. So something you can do is make sure you have physical copies of your presentation or a digital copy, a PDF format, etc., that we can share with folks early. Share it with them ahead of time so that they have it. This is just in case there's technology difficulties, or maybe you can't get it to pull up correctly, or maybe you had an interactive feature that didn't really work. You at least have a backup somewhere. And then also practice using the technology. So if they say, hey, we're going to do this interview over Zoom, you can use Zoom to practice. You're going to go in, you're going to practice sharing your screen, practice the different tools. If you need to use the annotate tool where you can write on the screen, or maybe you use the whiteboard feature, right? Practice using these tools ahead of time. Do not go into it winging it, because you want it to be perfect and seamless. Then have QR codes, handouts, props, whatever you feel you need to be effective in your presentation. Make sure you have those all available. And at the bottom here, my little reminder is that no one in the audience expects you to be perfect. And I think once we realize that, then we can be like, okay, I can go in and I can do this. Because you're never going to be perfect, but you can be prepared. And so I really encourage you, prepare as much as possible, because that's the closest to perfect that you'll get. I do have some other resources here for interviewing. So some different top interview questions, how to make a good impression, open-ended interview questions, and then this last one, which talks all about legal interview questions, or questions that they're absolutely not allowed to ask you. But if in the case that they do, how do you respond to that, right? How do you respond? What do you say? What's appropriate? So definitely check these out. Once you get the slides, you'll be able to click these little links and it'll take you there. So we just spent a lot of time talking about before the interview. Now we're transitioning to during the interview. We're going to do our best to make eye contact with each person. And then if we're virtual, right, we're on our computer, we're going to have that little sticky note to remind ourselves to look up. Yeah, happy and enthusiastic, have a positive attitude. We don't want to be sitting there like this in front of our computer, not at all engaged or excited, right? It's a very different tone. So we want to be excited. We want to be positive. We want to be happy because we really want this job, right? We want to show them that. We're going to have good posture. We're not going to be slouching. We're not going to be turned to the side. We're not going to be fidgeting or back and forth in our chair or distracted with our phone, right? We're going to be 100% focused on this interview. Then you spent so much time working on those awesome application materials. You're going to showcase those. I want you to have a copy of your resume. I want you to have a copy of your educator portfolio with you, or have the ability to share virtually if possible. Then usually towards the end of the interview, they're going to say, do you have any questions for us? Right? You are going to say, yes, I do, in fact. And you're going to have 3 to 5 questions ready to go to ask them. Now, if you're not sure what types of questions should you ask at the end, I did link a resource here for you that you can use. Really good examples of questions you can ask if you're not sure. One of those questions, however, should be asking them for their contact information. And you can phrase it like, do you mind sharing your contact information with me so that I can follow up if I have any additional questions or concerns, right? Then they can each give them your contact information. Now, after the interview, you just spent time collecting that contact information because you're going to follow up with them. You're also going to complete any next step. So sometimes they might say, oh, well, we were missing a document from you, or we need you to fill out this form. So make sure you complete any of those next steps in a timely manner. Usually within 24 to 48 hours, we want to send that information, but also send a thank you note. So let them know that you're grateful for the interaction. You're happy that you got to interview. Maybe there were specific personalized notes that you all talked about, right? You can discuss that in your thank you note. If you want to go a step further and you want to send a handwritten note, especially if you're local or you're close by, you can drop it off to them. Handwritten notes are fantastic, and it really does make a big impact. If you don't have great handwriting, there's an app called Punk Post where you can submit your message, pick a card design, and someone will actually create it and mail it for you. So if you're interested, Punk Post is great for that. And then if you don't hear back, so you already sent your follow-up email, you already thanked them for the time, but you haven't heard back. And so sometimes life happens, right? People go on vacation, people have children, people have emergencies, people lose their job. So there's tons of things that can go on behind the scenes, and that's why you might not be hearing what's next. You want to follow up every 10 to 14 days, okay? So after that interview, if you haven't heard anything, it's been a couple weeks, make sure you follow up. This really gives you another opportunity to sell yourself, but also let them know, hey, I'm interested. Just want to make sure you don't need anything else from me, right? Just kind of nudging them a little bit. So it is proper protocol, 10 to 14 days, you can send a follow-up. Now, if you get that awful rejection email, right, they say, unfortunately, we decided to go with other candidates, right? That doesn't mean that that door is closed for you. And that's really important to remember because you could be the backup for the position, right? You could be number 2. You could be number 2 in line. You never know what happens. And so if that number 1 person decides to go in a different direction or it doesn't work out, you are going to be the next in line. So what you can do is once you get that email, follow up with them. Say, hey, is there anything I could have done to improve my performance? Was there anything that I could have done to really seal the deal? Or is there something that you all noticed that was a red flag that you wouldn't mind sharing with me? That feedback is so powerful, and you really can use that to your advantage and use it next time. Be aware of those things that you can change. So I always want to put this in here about rejections. That doesn't mean that the door is closed. So I know I talked a lot about interviewing, and so I'm going to put this interviewing guide in the chat for you. You can bookmark this, you can download it. It is a PDF resource for you, so you can check it out, save it, and use it as you would like. Now we're going to move into salary and negotiation, but we're going to take a quick second here. Does anybody have any questions before we move forward? Okay, if you do, please drop those in the chat. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to follow up. If you're watching the replay, send me an email and we can chat about your questions as well. Into the salary negotiation process. Before you even get to this process, you really have to do a great job at advocating for yourself because that's where a lot of this motivation and the confidence is coming from. If we understand our value and we understand the level of education and our qualifications and experience, then we can translate that into asking for a raise or a salary expectation that aligns with us, okay? So I like to talk about being your own advocate because it's important that we start doing that, especially for my women who are watching this workshop. But I also want you to understand that salary isn't the only option. The full package we should be thinking about, okay? So yes, salary is important, but there's a lot of other things that we can consider, like PTO, right? Time away, professional development stipends, or paying for further education. Maybe we want to go on and get another level or a master's degree, or maybe we want to go and get a doctoral degree or a certificate program of some kind. Also, lots of retirement funds, right? These are important things that we should be thinking about. Tuition, loan repayment, right? There's lots of other options. So if salary isn't one of the options you can negotiate, think about some other ideas as well. Like I skipped a page here. That's okay. If you're in a position where you have multiple job offers, love that for you. That's fantastic. That means you're a really good candidate. You want to make sure that you're evaluating the full offer. All of the things are on the table. You really can get an idea of if this is going to be right for you. And so I did create this job offer evaluation template. And I will put this in the chat for you as well. So this allows you to go in, you can click on file and make a copy and it will save it, allow you to edit this. You can put in all of the offer details. You can really understand if this is going to be right for you. Now, if you are in a position where you will have multiple offers, the first thing I want you to do is really congratulate yourself because that really does mean you're a great candidate. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to ask for more time because there's no way that you can make a decision on the spot unless it's very black and white for you, right? You know, night and day, you know what the option is that you're going to go with. But that's very rare. Usually we're pretty stuck. We need to weigh out our options. So we're going to use that spreadsheet I just showed you, and we're going to use it to determine which one is better for us. Then we might need to ask for some help or some guidance, and that's okay. I would be shocked if you didn't. So ask your family, your spouse, your partner, your whoever in your life is your support system. You can also chat with me about it too if you'd like. And then we're going to get ready to negotiate. So remember that one offer does not mean it's the end all be all offer. There could be a couple rounds of negotiating, right? And then also communicate. Communicate, be professional, make sure everybody knows what's going on, and make sure you follow up within a reasonable amount of time. You might also be in a position where you're going to ask for a raise or a promotion. Pretty common, right? Maybe we're already working for the district, or maybe we did our student internship there, right? So we want to make sure that we do our research. There's tons of platforms out there that will allow you to do research, and you can really figure out what the pay rate is or the salary range is for your position. A lot of districts have pay scales listed on their website. If for some reason they don't, you should email HR and ask for them. And then also make sure we look at the full package, right? If salary isn't an option, then look at some other options that we can negotiate too. What we want to do though is we want to showcase why we deserve this, right? We want to showcase how our contributions have impacted the district, or really showcase the highlights of our academic year if we did our internship there. So really showcase the value provided and emphasize why you've earned this raise, because you absolutely should have. So that's how we can go about this process. Now, there's some things that we don't want to say when negotiating. And so we don't want to say or disclose what we made at our last job, because one, they don't need to know it. But two, it's also limiting yourself, right? Because then when you tell them what you made at your last role, it's kind of following you into this one, because they can say, oh, well, you only made this, so we only have to give you a little bit more for you to say yes, right? That's really limiting yourself. So don't disclose what you made at your past role. Similarly, we don't want to say, I need more money, or I can't really afford my rent if I don't get paid this amount of money, right? They don't need to know that. And you don't want to bring in your personal details, because one, it's kind of exposing your situation, your financial situation, and we don't want to be doing that. So you want to try to be very clear and concise. We don't want to make any demands. We also don't want to undervalue ourselves. Right? Doing our research is really important because we know what we should be making. And then we don't want to go into this empty-handed, right? We're going to do our research. We're going to have everything in writing. We're going to come prepared, and we're going to have that confidence to chat about it. So here's some things that you could say. We want to reinforce that we're really excited about this opportunity, right? We're enthusiastic. We're grateful as well. And then you're going to say, well, based on my research or similarly situated educators, right, because we used the different resources and we have the information to back it up. You might say, is this number flexible at all? Or I would really be more comfortable if we agreed around a base salary of X to Y. And then, of course, we're going to say, do you mind if I take a couple days to consider it? That gives you enough time to really process the information and make sure you're making a very clear, well-informed career decision. So try these different phrases out when you're negotiating because they're very professional. They really showcase that you're here and you're taking this process seriously, but also you have the information to back it up as well. So here are those recommended resources. Own It Online is a really great one. You can actually filter by location, so you can really get a clear understanding of the salary range. Glassdoor is another great one because it's real people who provide reviews and salary. So very transparent on there. You're going to get real-time information. These other ones are great as well. So you can definitely use these different resources as you move forward. Just for interviewing, I have a salary guide as well. So I will put this one in the chat for you to check out. Same thing, it is a PDF, so you can bookmark this, you can download it, save it to your desktop, save it to your computer, whatever it is. You can review it later on. Now, after you accept that job offer, we're going to celebrate because you're employed, right? We're going to be super excited. And then we're going to think, okay, what do I need to do now? So we want to make sure we fill out all the paperwork, we get everything taken care of, everything is set up properly, make sure that anything that they promised when you were negotiating actually is followed through upon. Then we're going to connect back with USU and we're going to share the good news. So you can share it with the College of Education, but you're also going to be getting a post-graduation survey from me. So I'm going to be sending this out from either my personal email for USU or the Career Services email. So just know if you do get an email that asks you to complete a survey, it is from me. It is real, I promise. And it's really just so that we can gather this information. The information that you provide directly supports us so that we can tell students, hey, we had a graduate who's employed here. And so then we can have future students become employees at your district or your organization. And then we can also consider it for future student teachers. If we have any sites, right, we can look to you and say, hey, do you mind taking on a student teacher? And then you can give back in a way. And then we're going to update our documents. We're going to update our resume. We're going to update our portfolio. We're going to share it to the world on LinkedIn and social media and let them know, hey, I finished my degree, I'm employed, and I'm really excited about it. So after we get our job offer and we accept it, these are the items that we're going to do. So wrapping up here, I have some final tips for overall success. So for interviewing, we often get so anxious and so worried about doing well in the interview that we forget that we're actually interviewing them too, right? Just as much as that we want this to be a good fit, we need to make sure that that organization is going to suit our needs best. So ask those important questions. Ask what you need in order to make that well-informed decision. Then we're going to also make sure we follow up and stay connected. So always send that thank you note after your interview or your interactions with folks. And then remember that a rejection doesn't mean that door is closed. We never know what could be going on behind the scenes. We're going to do our research and we're going to come prepared for salary conversations. Right? We're going to use our resources so that we're more confident, we're motivated, and we have the information to move forward. Now, if you feel like you're stuck, you're not sure where to start, you need job search support. Wherever you are in your process, if you have questions, please, please, please come and see me. I am here for you. I am happy to support you in any of these processes, okay? And so here's my information. connect with me. I'm going to drop a couple different things in the chat for you all. The first one is my email. Okay, so email me if you have questions, if you want to chat, if you want me to review something for you, email me. If you want that one-on-one time dedicated to you, make an appointment. If for some reason you want to make an appointment, but the times on my calendar don't work for you or are not convenient, send me an email. We can chat. We can set something up that will work. Okay. And then the Career Resources website has tons of information, so you can access it 24/7. I also have the list of upcoming events on there, so if you want to attend a future webinar or resource, check them out. And then the last one is a super quick presentation feedback form. So if you need support, if you have feedback on today's presentation, whether it's good or bad, it's anonymous. It takes a couple seconds. So if you want to fill it out and give me some feedback, I would appreciate it. But otherwise, I will hang out if there's any questions. But feel free to email me your questions if you're watching the replay. And hopefully this was helpful for you. And if you need further support, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay? Take care, everybody. And I hope to see you soon, whether that is in a future appointment or a workshop. Take care.